In the previous lecture video, we looked at the definition of PPC, which is just a collection of points representing different production choices available to a firm given its resources and technology. Then we also drew the PPC, and we know what do points on PPC mean, what do points of PPC mean, and towards the end I introduced you to the concept of opportunity cost. And what we have discussed there is, because we face a constraint of resources, it could be time, it could be money, it could be factors of production, or what we call in economics scarcity of resources. And so when we have scarcity of resources, we'll have a number of options available to us or number of choices available to us, and because of that we'll be forced to decide, and when we decide we incur a cost called opportunity cost. So opportunity cost is what you give up in order to gain something. This is the most general definition of opportunity cost. Now let us use this in the context of Mark Jeans Incorporated. So what will be opportunity cost of Western cut jeans? That will be the amount of baggy jeans you would give up or the firm would give up when you decide to increase production of Western cut jeans by 1 unit, opportunity cost of Western cut jeans. And we can measure this as well in precise terms, and that will be opportunity cost of Western cut jeans is change in baggy jeans divided by change in Western cut jeans. And you know what this ratio would mean. We had looked at it from the slope side when we discussed tools we use in mathematics. And so what would this represent? By how many units we have to reduce production of baggy jeans when production of Western cut jeans increases by 1 unit. And let us now calculate these numbers. Now to calculate these numbers, look at the following. Suppose the firm is sitting at a point like A and decides to move to a point like B, or it decides to increase production of Western cut jeans by 1 unit. How many baggy jeans does it give up? It gives up 1,000 units of baggy jeans. And so what is opportunity cost of Western cut jeans? It will be change in baggy jeans divided by change in Western cut jeans. So let me just type this out once again so you can remember this. So opportunity cost, I'll abbreviate all this. Opportunity cost of Western cut jeans will be change in baggy jeans divided by change in Western cut jeans. And you know what is change? How do we measure this? This is just the difference between two consecutive numbers. So here we'll calculate 4 minus 5, which is the change in baggy jeans. Divide this by change in Western cut jeans. And what you will get here is negative 1. Let us just ignore this column for a moment. So opportunity cost of Western cut jeans when the firm decides to move from a point like A to a point like B is negative 1. Now this firm is sitting at a point like B and decides to move to a point like C. What is the change in production of baggy jeans? It is 4 minus 3. And what is the change in Western cut jeans? It will be 2 minus 1. And once again, when you solve for this, you get negative 1. And in this way, you can complete this table. And let me just show this to you in a much more cleaner manner. As I promised, now you have a cleaner table. And as you can see, what we have figured out is opportunity cost of Western cut jeans between all points. And we know I've already shown to you when the firm moves from A to B, what will be the opportunity cost of Western cut jeans. We calculated this. When the firm is sitting at B, decides to move to a point like C, what will be the opportunity cost of Western cut jeans, and so on. And this way you can do rest of the calculations. And what you'll find is opportunity cost of Western cut jeans is -1 throughout. And why is this -1, or this number is fixed all throughout? Consider the following. Let me draw an informal diagram so you can see what is happening. And we have Western cut jeans on the horizontal axis as in thousands, and we have baggy jeans. I'll not write 1000, I'm running out of, or I could write it here. Baggy jeans on the vertical axis, and we drew a PPC. Now, what is opportunity cost of Western cut jeans? It is change. I'll just use triangle to represent change in baggy jeans divided by change in Western cut jeans. And what you find is the following. On the y-axis, what we have is baggy jeans, and what do we have on the x-axis? It is Western cut jeans. Or in other words, this is simply change in y divided by change in x. Or in other words, opportunity cost of a good on the horizontal axis is the same thing as slope of PPC. Slope of PPC. And what this means is the following. If opportunity cost is a fixed number, that is, it doesn't change, it's like -1 all throughout, what this represents is a constant cost or constant slope. And when do we have constant value of slope? When we are looking at a straight line. So in terms of this example, this particular example, what we have is a straight line PPC, and what does it represent? It represents constant opportunity cost. Now, based on the definition of opportunity cost of Western cut jeans, we calculated opportunity cost of Western cut jeans for different consecutive points. And what is opportunity cost of Western cut jeans? The amount of baggy jeans, the other good, a firm would give up when it increases production of Western cut jeans by 1 unit. Now let us try to define opportunity cost of baggy jeans. This is very systematic in economics, and so it shouldn't be too hard. So let me just type this out. Opportunity cost of baggy jeans, how would we define it? It will be the amount of the other good you would give up, which is Western cut jeans, a firm would give up when it increases production of baggy jeans by 1 unit. So if you can define it for one good, you can also define it for the other good, provided you follow the definition. Now we know in order to measure opportunity cost of Western cut jeans, we use this ratio, which is change in production of baggy jeans divided by change in production of Western cut jeans. So let us write opportunity cost of baggy jeans in terms of a ratio, and we know it will be change in Western cut jeans divided by change in baggy jeans. And here you have this ratio. Now let us calculate opportunity cost of baggy jeans for completion. The question you are asking is, when baggy jeans, we decide to increase production of baggy jeans. Now, when we looked at increasing production of Western cut jeans, we moved in a downward direction like this. You see increase in production of Western cut jeans. To calculate opportunity cost of baggy jeans, what you will do is you'll move in the opposite direction, and this is where you see an increase in production of baggy jeans. So now the firm is sitting at F, produces no baggy jeans, decides to move to E and decides to produce Western baggy jeans, 1000 units of baggy jeans. So how much will be the change in Western cut jeans? It will be 4 minus 5, which is negative 1. I'll just write negative 1 here and divide this by change in production of baggy jeans, which will be plus 1, and what you get is negative 1. And in this way you should be able to calculate opportunity cost of baggy jeans between two consecutive points, and what you'll find is once again it is negative 1. Another thing you'll observe is when you look at how we measure opportunity cost of Western cut jeans or opportunity cost of baggy jeans, what this shows is these two are inverses of one another. For example, you find in some other this thing that this is negative 100, opportunity cost of Western cut jeans is negative 100. Based on this information, what will be the opportunity cost of baggy jeans? It will be negative 1 by 100. Why? Because these two are inverses of one another. Another thing you should note is the following. We have already discussed this, that opportunity cost of Western cut jeans is the same thing as slope of PPC, and the slope comes with a value of a negative sign, negative number, and that means PPC must be downward sloping. And when you see a downward sloping curve, what this means is you have to give up something in order to gain something, or there is a trade-off between these two goods. Now what we have seen is the PPC for Mark Jeans Incorporated was a straight line PPC. And why did Mark Jeans Incorporated have a straight line PPC? Simply because of constant opportunity cost. It just didn't change. So when you see a straight line PPC, what it reflects is a constant cost principle, and what this means is you are giving up a fixed amount of the other goods as you decide to increase production of one. Now look at this kind of PPC, another possible shape. And here what you find is as you increase production of good X, what happens to the absolute value of slope? That will continue to increase, or this is increasing cost principle. As you increase production of X, you are giving up more and more of Y. And the third diagram represents decreasing cost principle. Now for Mark Jeans Incorporated, we had drawn this PPC based on how many workers, machines, and so on it had, and let us just call this PPC 0. Now suppose Mark Jeans Incorporated decides to reduce the amount of resources it has, maybe reduce number of workers from 50 to 20 or something like that. And so when there's a reduction in resources, the firm will be able to produce less, and what we will get is a new PPC. Let's call this PPC 1. And here the maximum amount of jeans that this firm can produce in any combination will be 3000 jeans. What we saw on the previous slide is a leftward shift of PPC, and what it reflected is a decrease in production possibilities available to this firm, and this could happen because of decrease in resources or the opposite of technical progress, which I call technical regress. And so I've shown leftward shift of PPC. Now reasons for a rightward shift of PPC or an increase in PPC will be exactly the opposite. That will be an increase in resources will increase production possibilities available to the firm, and technical progress can also do the same type of shift. This completes our discussion of PPC. Thank you for your time.